Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. This is your coach, Mr. Magno. We are on Module 6, Lesson 6. This is a template of a quadrant 1, and we're going to start with point A. Point A is going to be 2 and 1/2 and 1 and 1/4. Now, notice that we have fractions here. So we have to make sure we need to know where the fractions are. So if you can see from 0 to 1, there is 1, 2, 3. So as you can see, that's 4. Each of these is going to be a 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And obviously in the middle will be 1/2 as well. It's going to be probably the same thing up here. This is a 1, this is the origin, 0. And there are 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. That means each line, each tick is going to be worth 1/4. And this is 2/4 or equals 1/2, and 3/4 and 4/4 equals 1. So this is how you're going to manage this, okay? Now, let's plot the point A. So point A says x should be 2 and 1/2. If you look at x, well, let's label x. This is going to be x, and the perpendicular line is going to be y. Now, when you are plotting x, you always run to the right. You run and then you jump. So let's do this, 2 and 1/2. So it's going to be 2 and 1/2 should be between 2 and 3. So this is going to be 2 and 1/2. That's where the line begins, okay? And now it's telling us the y is 1 and 1/4. So we're going to go up 1 and 1/4. So let's see. So here is 1. We stop right here. This is where they cross. But we said 1 and 1/4. And remember, if I do one more, this is going to be 1/4. So it's going to be 1 and 1/4. So this is where these lines meet. Okay? So that is, let's label it. That's going to be point A. This is where they meet, point A. Okay, so what if our next point is B has the same coordinate, and y is different. Y is 2 and 3/4. Okay, let's plot that second one, and let's start again. They both have the same x, the same value on x. So all we got to worry is about y. So we're gonna jump. We already ran 2 and 1/2. Now we're gonna jump to 2 and 3/4. So here is 2. And remember, this is 2 and 1/4. This is 2 and 1/2 or 2/4. And this is going to be 2 and 3/4 right here. This is where they're going to meet. So if we're gonna go, it's gonna jump, 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 and it jumps all the way over here. So this is where they're going to the x that runs and then the y that jumps. That's where the point B is going to be. Here's B. Let's do one more point. Let's say point C is the same value for x, as you can see, and for y is going to be 2. Okay, now let's write the coordinates right here. So these are the points. These are the points. This is the value for x, and this is the value for y. So now we're going to write the coordinates. The coordinate for point A is 2 and 1/2, which is this, comma, and 1 and 1/4. Okay. Now the coordinate for B is going to be the coordinate pairs. That's what they call pairs because there are 2 of them. 2 and 1/2, and y is going to be represented by 2 and 3/4. Okay. And now we're doing 2 and 1/2 as the x-axis again for C, but the y-axis is going to be 2. So this is the coordinate pairs. Now let's do C. So x have the same value, 2 and 1/2. But in this case, y has a 2. So let's see where they meet. If I put my marker right here, they meet exactly where the 2 is. See the 2 right there? If I use another marker, they meet right there. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to dot this line, and point C is going to be represented right here. Okay, now, as you can see, all of these values, all of these points have the same value for x. Remember, that's one important question that you need to remember. They all have the same value for x. So this is where this is the line right here. Okay, and we're gonna label this line. Let's give it a letter. So that's gonna be, let's say this is N, excuse me, line N. We just labeled it. This is line N, segment A, N. Okay, let's create another line. So now we're going to look over here to the right hand side, and we're going to start with x as the same value, 2 and 1/2. And the value for y is half. Okay, now we're going to write the coordinate pairs, which are 2 and 1/2, which is right there. And the value for y is 1/2. So that's those are the coordinate pairs. Now we're going to plot them on the grid. 2 and 1/2. So x is always 2 and 1/2 right here. So we're going to move. Okay, look, this is 2 and 1/2. And y, we're going to jump half only. So half will be right here. So they will be meeting at this point where they intersect. So we're going to label this point D. Okay. Okay. So let's have another point, which is point E, and we can give this the x value. The x on the coordinate is 3/4. That's part of the point. And y is going to be 1/2. So let's write the coordinate pairs, which is this number 3/4. It's equals the x axis, and y is 1/2. Okay, now let's label that one. So that's 3/4. So 3/4 is going to be right here, and y is going to be half. So 3/4, and they're going to meet right here. Oh, look at this. These 2 points are going to have the same line. They're going to share the same line. We're going to call it point E. Our next point is going to have the x-axis is going to be 1 and 1/2. And the y-axis is going to be 1/2. Notice that in this case, now all the y points have the same y-axis, the same value. Now let's write the coordinate pairs, 1 and 1/2 and 1/2. Okay, let's label it now. So 1 and 1/2 is going to be x, which is always running, 1. And half between 1 and 2 is going to be right here, 1 and 1/2. And we're going to jump half. So it's going to be right here. They're going to meet right exactly where they intersect on this point. And we're going to call this point F. Okay, now we're going to create the line for that one. Now, how do we know this is a line? Well, we know this is a line because they all have the same y value. Look. Right here, this is one line. I'm going to call this line M. Okay, as you can see, now we have 2 lines. It's line N, which is this line is parallel to the y-axis, and we can say that line X is 2.5 points away from y. And then we have line M, which is parallel to the x-axis, and it's 2 half away from x. So that will be the y is half away from x. So notice that we have two lines that cross each other, and they're perpendicular lines. Watch this video again. This is pretty much what you're going to be doing, plotting numbers, giving values for x and y, and then plotting the coordinate. Remember, these are called the coordinate pairs. Coordinate pairs. That means there has to be two numbers because it says pairs. And notice also the patterns. Like in this case, the pattern for line N, x was the same. It was the same value for x, and y was different. So what x had in common, the line N, all the x, what they have in common, each point was the value of x was the same for A, B, and C. And what this line had in common was that the value of y for points D, E, and F was the same. Okay, my friends, make sure you watch the video, pay attention to the instructions, ask questions, review these beautiful lessons, and just read carefully. I wish you the best for math, and your coach is signing out, Mr. Magno.